I had John copy this innovation radar. You'll find it on your table, and that's really because as a business school professor, if I don't have any slides, I just can't operate. So this is my slide. I won't go into detail about it, but what it illustrates, we can do a number of things with it. We have a robust methodology for metricing how innovative your company is relative to the competition, and it's a great strategic tool. But from the perspective of new business creation, it's a simple new business design tool that sensitizes people to the fact that they can't just look at the development of a product, the design, the technology. They need to account for all of these other factors, factors like supply chain, brand, the platform, the solution for the customer, the definition of the customers, the way we capture value, which is how people pay us. You have to account for all of those things. That's not the same thing as saying you need to innovate on all those things, because if you try to, your company will blow up. I'd rather, that's not such a good decision. But instead, you need to do this in a deliberate fashion. You need to say to yourself, if this new product or new business, new service we're trying to introduce, can we use our existing supply chain? Okay, yes we can, no problem, check. On the other hand, do we need to build a new brand around it? Okay, well maybe there's an issue here. Maybe we don't have brand permission in this space, but we do have the technology, capabilities, channels necessary, so maybe we need to take a new approach. And what this alleviates significantly is the problem that many new product and new business development groups have at companies is they get very focused on the product, or they get very focused on the technology, or they get focused on whatever aspect of the business system is important to that company. And the other thing we've found from the past 6 years of developing this is companies in the same industries innovate on the same stuff over and over again. If you're a pharmaceutical company, you innovate on drug products. And I wouldn't try and tell a pharma company to not come up with new drugs. That would be ridiculous. But at the same time, if you look in places where no one else is paying much attention, you're much more likely to create industry transformative or game-changing innovation. A quick example that supports that would be direct-to-consumer advertising. For the history of the drug industry, almost everybody agreed that direct-to-consumer advertising for pharmaceutical drug products would be a stupid idea. And they had a great argument. And that argument was, well, consumers don't really know what they need anyway, right, even if they think they do. 2, they can't buy the product if they want to. They have to go to a doctor to get a prescription. So that's a pretty good argument. I think I would have agreed and said, maybe it would be stupid to spend much money innovating around the brand for a pharmaceutical drug product. Well, in the early 90s, AstraZeneca and Pfizer came along and decided to think about the game differently. They lobbied the FDA, got the rules changed, and thus was born Prilosec, the largest grossing drug in history. And they will tell you that had it not been for DTC advertising, they would never have reached that level of revenue because, first of all, most people didn't know what gastroesophageal reflux disorder was. And I'll tell you, when you find out you've got GERD, you want to get rid of it, right? So since then, you cannot go to market with a potential blockbuster without at least considering direct-to-consumer advertising. So the notion of transforming an industry often comes as very little to do with technology in many cases. So the second point, and I'll be brief in the remainder of my comments, the second point that the book drives home, so there's a notion of new business design. That is how we think about and design new opportunities. And the second notion of the book is how do we act on them? What is it that companies are doing that might be different than just having an R&D lab or a skunk works where they're out in the middle of the desert doing whatever they feel like, a sort of Xerox PARC path, which was exceptionally successful and a desperate failure at the same time. I urge you to look up Xerox PARC if you're unfamiliar with it. But instead, do things that are targeted toward the objectives you want to pursue in terms of innovation. What do I mean by that? A lot of times CEOs will set up an innovation group at a company and with big fanfare and a budget, and they'll say, go out and innovate, come up with new businesses, new products, et cetera. And that lasts for about 3 years until the thing is shot and they throw it out back. And what often happens in this type of a case is people get excited and they're motivated and they want to make a difference. And so they run out and they say, oh, fabulous, we're the innovation group, let's go innovate. So we'll come up with new products and let's go design new businesses, totally new businesses for the company. And maybe we can help the business units transform the way they operate. And wow, let's build a culture of innovation here at this company. Good luck. You and the 6 of you and our 100,000 employees. Yeah, good luck. If you think about these 5 objectives, they're all noble and important, but they're all very different. So the notion of taking the same sort of solutions from one company and transferring them over and throwing them at all these different approaches is kind of silly when you stand back. So one of the things that we have found is the companies that set up innovation initiatives, if they do, the companies that set up innovation initiatives tend to do best when those initiatives are very focused. They have a very clear idea of what specifically it is they're trying to do. And to give you a quick example, this notion of creating brand new businesses or helping established business units change the way they operate are 2 exceptionally different things. If you want to create substantially new businesses like the EBO program does at IBM quite successfully, you really need to make sure there's a pot of money and a significant group of people who are going to be there to help to spend it in smart ways. On the other hand, if you're trying to work with established business units to help them transform the way they operate, then you probably need a different kind of approach. You need people who are going to be bridge builders, advocates, facilitators. You need the business units to contribute their own money to projects, their own people to projects. Otherwise, it's never going to stick. And one of the traditional problems we've seen with approaches to innovation at corporations is they'll come up with great ideas in the lab, they'll develop it, they'll test it, they might even get an initial client or 2 paying for it. But then when it comes time to transition it into the business, it blows up, or the business itself kills it. This is what we call the transition and scaling challenge. And this is where the primary challenges are for the companies at the leading edge right now, because they're getting the early stage, the ideation, the testing, all the stuff that my colleagues talk about. They're getting that right. But it's when we now need to transition it into the business, which is the big challenge. So if your objective is to change the way existing businesses operate, you're probably talking about needing a small team with a modest budget so that they are compelled, forced to go out and find business unit partners and find business unit leaders who are willing to invest in projects and move forward on things that they are actually going to transition.